Before I get started, I'll do my usual spiel just so everybody's familiar with what we're doing. For those that are watching at home, in terms of our COVID guidelines for the room. Prior to coming in here today, all of our media partners were temperature tested. Everybody's wearing a mask and maintaining social distance in the room. I am now going to remove my mask to assist our viewers that may read lips and so that I'm less muffled from mine. All right, thank you all for being here. Slightly larger group than normal today. So I'm glad to see it. We're here every Tuesday at about 11:15 and we'd love to see you more often. Before I get into questions, and I've got a pretty good sense of what everybody wants to talk about today, I'm going to make a couple of announcements. Essentially what I want to do first, as we always do, is open with the updates in the COVID situation. Primarily because that will inform the conversation we have next regarding Mardi Gras. I know that there are questions about Mardi Gras. We're definitely going to address those, but first I need to update you on where we are with COVID, because that gives you the context to understand the conversation around Mardi Gras. As of yesterday, there were 14,439 cases and 605 deaths in Orleans Parish. That's nearly 1,000 new cases in the last 2 weeks and 10 deaths. We're averaging around 60 new cases a day, and our positivity rate is 2.2%. I spoke to the health department this morning, and what they're looking at is that positivity rate, which is rising. It's more than doubled in the last week. 5% is a critical threshold, and we're not there yet, but it is a cause for concern, and it's something that Dr. Avegno and her team and the mayor are looking at very closely. In addition, hospitalizations are going up statewide and across the country. In Orleans right now, they are stable. However, as we know from the summer, when this has happened in the past, as hospitalization rises elsewhere in the state, that does spill over into Orleans. So that's another metric that we're looking at very closely. Cases have been ticking up overall. We're trying to determine to what degree that may or may not be correlated with students at Tulane and our universities. But the fact of the matter is the majority is unlikely to come from the universities, and it's Dr. Avegno's belief and the health department's belief that we are experiencing community spread, full stop. The spread is primarily coming from parties, large and small, and from social gatherings of any size. So it's been a week of concerning trends, and the next couple of days are going to be very critical. The health department is working with our state partners, and they're examining what the best practices are elsewhere as other communities are dealing with this. As we know, for a while now, Orleans has been a little bit of an island. If you look at the maps and look at the heat maps, Orleans has been different than the rest of the state. We are now starting to get to the point where we're catching up with what we're seeing across the state and across the country. Along those lines, it's very important, two things. One, to note, everybody still needs to continue to go get tested. Those opportunities remain available. We have drive-through testing at the Mahalia Jackson, at UNO, and at the Larios Center this week from Monday to Saturday, 8 till 4. That's in assistance with the Louisiana National Guard. We have drive-through at the Living School Monday to Friday, 1 till 5, and walk-up testing at the First Grace United Methodist Church, Tuesday to Thursday, 8 till 1. Lastly, I'll mention an enforcement piece. There was a formal written notice issued against 514-16 Frenchman Street this weekend for activities that occurred over the weekend. As I say pretty much every Monday and Tuesday, we have social media just like everybody else, and we see the photos, and where we can, we take action. In this instance, they issued a notice for failure to have the appropriate license or permit to have live entertainment, for no mask or facial covering enforcement, and no social distancing. Last week, we had 119 business non-compliance reports and 54 large gathering complaints. That was between November the 9th and through November 16th. Now, all that being said, I want to be very clear. Mardi Gras 2021 is not canceled. It is going to look different. The mayor's been very consistent about saying that at every stage. Given the information that we know surrounding COVID, given the stats that I laid out for you right now, we know that what we celebrate next year is not going to look like it's looked at any other year. We also know, however, that Mardi Gras is a holiday, more than a holiday. It's an event that has tremendous religious, cultural, artistic, even psychic significance for our people and for our city. To be clear, the mayor has neither the power nor the desire to cancel Mardi Gras. It's a holiday and it's going to happen one way or the other. Now, that being said, under the current guidelines, gatherings of more than 250 people are not permitted. That should come as no surprise to anyone, and the mayor has said consistently in interviews with the media and directly in conversation with the crews themselves that what we want to do is work with them to find ways forward under the current guidelines. So it is going to have to be different. The deadline for alternatives and suggestions that we're soliciting from the public and from the crews, for the crews that remains December the 5th, and for the public that's December the 4th. We did throw that open yesterday for public comment and suggestion. We're absorbing that feedback right now, and we do want to continue this dialogue with the crews. That being said, everything that moves forward has to move forward in line with the health guidelines that are in place, the state regulations and the local regulations that are in place right now. And that does mean social distancing, that does mean masking, and that does mean respecting the gathering size limits. So as we've said before, Mardi Gras is not canceled, but it is going to look different this year. And we look forward to working with the crews and with our creative community, with our residents, finding ways to do this, to celebrate and to move forward in a way that respects the public health situation that we're all facing. So shortly I'll take a couple of questions, but now that I've spoken on that, I do have a couple more announcements, and I appreciate your attention on these because while maybe not as dramatic, they are certainly important, and we want to make sure people hear them. The JGIC is having a job fair today, starting at 9 a.m. and it's going until 2 p.m. They're at 1100A Milton Street, and these are jobs that you can get today. The juvenile detention counselors, social workers, custodial workers, and grounds patrol. They're looking to fill these positions right away. And again, today is the time to go down and do it. Obviously, given the current situation we're all in, there are many folks that are without jobs and without work. If you're looking for work, there's an opportunity for you today. JGIC is hiring, and Dr. Webster has asked me to make that announcement as many times and as clearly as I could, so that's that piece. Okay, beyond that, I think that's all I have in terms of the announcements. I'm going to move to questions.
To be clear, although Mardi Gras is not canceled, there will not be parades for 2021. That's sort of
right. So as we've said, under the current guidelines, you can have a gathering of larger than 250 people. So your common sense would tell you that parades, as we have traditionally celebrated them here, are not possible under the current guidelines, and that's why we're asking for people to help us work on some creative alternatives. I don't personally know what that looks like. I think we're all still trying to work that out. This is going to be a completely different year for us. It's going to be a different year for New Orleans. It's going to feel different. It has to be different. Given the public health emergency that we face, given what we know, we can't proceed as if nothing was changed. And that's why we have tried to work with the crews throughout this, and the mayor's tried to be consistent in her messaging that it's not canceled, but it is really going to be different. So yes, absolutely, that would be a part of it.
I was on the phone earlier with the head of the Endymion crew, and he was sort of shocked to know that there were no parades canceled. He was hoping that there would be some type of consideration to postpone Mardi Gras, maybe to April, or is that possible?
I can tell you that the mayor and her team have been in conversation with the crews throughout this process. I can't speak to specifically the Endymion captain in terms of who he spoke to at what given time, but I think the mayor's been very clear throughout this that whatever happens and whatever way this moves forward, it would have to be under the public health guidelines. And the guidelines that are in place are very clear that you can't have a gathering that's that large. There's no way that that's responsible given what we know about the pandemic right now. So while we certainly want to move forward and find ways that we can celebrate and that we can mark this occasion, we have to do it safely. We have, again, you just heard me say, the deaths have, 10 more deaths in the last 2 weeks. The positivity rate doubled in the last week. So we can't act like this is just a normal year. And we want to give every consideration possible to our crews and to our residents, to the entire experience. This isn't something that anyone does lightly, but it is done absolutely under strict adherence to what we believe are the best public health guidelines available.
It was posted on the city's website November 13th, which was last Friday, that parading would not be permitted in the city of New Orleans because of a large gathering. Were crews notified, were crew captains notified that parading would not happen?
My understanding is that this has been part of the conversation all along. In terms of were they notified that that post was going to go up at that time, I don't think so. But I think the larger conversation has always been, and you heard the mayor say it, I think she said it to Aubrey yesterday on camera, that given where we are, given the conditions, parading isn't possible in those conditions, right? A gathering, again, under the state guidelines that exist, under the local guidelines, large gathering over 250 people is not safe right now. So I don't think this should be a surprise to anyone that this is a consideration and that this is the bounds that we have to work in, right? We all want to find a way forward. We want to find a way to celebrate the day, but again, we have to do it safe.
WDSU. So Mardi Gras is a specific day. Carnival season is something that goes on for a long time.
Yes.
So when we say there are no parades on Mardi Gras, we say Mardi Gras is not canceled. Are we talking about Carnival 2021?
We're talking
or
about
Mardi Gras the day?
whatever happens between now and then. Again, we don't know what the conditions are going to be in February. We've got, based on the numbers that we see now, we can unfortunately make a pretty educated guess. But we're going to continue to respond to the conditions as they develop, right? If there's tremendous positive developments and we're able to ease the guidelines in a tremendous way, certainly we'd like to see that happen. But based on what we now know, all preparations for any of the carnival-related events or any events period, a ball, a parade, a gathering, whatever that is, have to happen in line with the guidelines that exist currently. And that includes large gatherings, that includes limits on social distance, and includes masking.
So when we see that, it seems like now famous statement from the city, Mardi Gras is not canceled, just different, people can assume that means Carnival 2021, not just the day?
Right, yes, correct. In that sense, Mardi Gras would apply to the Mardi Gras season or to Carnival, correct, yeah, I mean, yeah. Used in the same way there. And I know, I'm a transplant myself, unfortunately, I do take that sin on, so it's an easy mistake to make for some folks, but yes, clearly, when we're talking about that, we do mean Carnival as a season.
One more question, just kind of going off what Fox 8 asked. Do you understand that the look of it is bad, that just kind of, people saw this online today and it kind of blew up? You know, I think there are a lot of people who felt blindsided by this, not getting a more personal kind of parades aren't gonna happen, that sort of thing. People may have assumed it, but.
Sure. Well, no, I take issue with it because the look of it was bad. I think all of us, everybody in this conversation are adults, and we've all been here since March. Again, none of this information should be a surprise to anybody, nor do I really think that it is. The guidelines have been in place for a long time, and everything the mayor has said about this has been that whatever happens and whatever way we move forward, it will have to be in line with the health guidelines that are in place.
WWL.
So this question was kind of already asked, but if the virus is more under control, or we have a vaccine early next year, is there any way the city would consider allowing parades to roll at any point in 2021?
I think there's a lot of theoreticals packed into that question. And I don't mean to be a smartass with you, but in all honesty, we don't know what it's going to look like in February. I think we are all remain optimistic for a vaccine, for treatment, for developments that would enable us to ease the guidelines. Given what we know now, and given that it's the middle of November, it doesn't seem reasonable to expect a massive sea change between now and the middle of February. With that said, certainly we remain open to and optimistic for any positive development that would allow for changes.
Another question. And so I know y'all are speaking with the crew members and the leaders of the different crews about different ways they can celebrate. Are there any ideas that y'all have talked about that you can discuss about different ways they might be able to still have some sort of celebration?
Sure, not that I have right now. Again, that conversation is ongoing, and they have until December 5th to sort of present what their proposals would be. And I think once we look at those and determine how they would function in line with the public safety guidelines, then we'd be in a spot where we could be more specific about what they're rolling out.
The Gambit and then the Attitude.
Okay, I was wondering what message the city is planning to send to tourists who may be considering coming to town for Mardi Gras.
Yeah, I would say it's the same message we're sending to our locals, that Mardi Gras is not canceled, but it is different. It's very different this year. It's different than what you may have in mind if you've never been before. If you have been before, it's different than anything you've ever experienced. And we were all collectively trying to figure out what that's going to look like. Because I don't think you need me to tell you, we're in unprecedented times. And for visitors that are coming to the city, one of the things that we have fought really hard for when we bent the cart, when we stopped the spread, was to establish that New Orleans is a safe place to come. It's a safe place to be. Right now, the numbers are concerning and they're rising. So anybody that is coming to experience Mardi Gras, we want them to know it's a very different year this year. It's not usually like this. We know it's not going to be like it always is. But we would ask them as they come to respect the guidelines that are in place, just as we're asking our crews and our residents to do. And again, it just comes back to the basics: social distancing, wear a mask, no large gatherings.
The Attitude.
I have two questions. One, just to follow up on that, is the city then explicitly asking people to continue, tourists, out-of-towners to continue to come for Mardi Gras, or would that be problematic under the rules? And two, so far, every time the city has been asked about plans for Mardi Gras, there's been a lot of vagueness about what the rules will be, a lot of discussion about future discussions.
Sure.
And now we're getting this very explicit that there will be no parade, so I
Right.
want to know what changed.
Well, let me take your second question first. I don't think anything has changed, and I think that's almost the point. We've been here, as I said earlier, since March, and we've all been experiencing this. And when I say it should come as no surprise to everybody, the data that we're seeing, the information that we're responding to is cumulative, it's rising, and it's something that everyone is well aware of. When you talk about how we discuss this throughout the process, we have wanted to remain flexible. We wanted to work with our crews to find ways that we can celebrate in a way that is safe, that honors the tradition, but that also falls within the public health guidelines. But I don't think at any time the mayor said we were going to celebrate in a way that fell outside of those guidelines. So at this point, again, we're into mid-November. That post went up, that information went up, it was that concrete, strictly because of where we are at the time, so it's clear to everybody. Because it does seem like there's some confusion there. I don't necessarily think that there should have been, but now there is clarity, okay? Given where we are, underneath the guidelines that are in place, a gathering of more than 250 people is not safe and it's not permissible.
And, why
I
was
lost
it?
your first question, I'm sorry.
So, actually, so, I still like to answer on the other one, but follow up on that. Why was it posted on a FAQ, 2 pages deep on the mayor's site rather than a press release or other announcement?
Yeah, no, that's an excellent question, Jeff. And to be frank with you, it's something that I'd like to tighten up internally because I think it was part of larger messaging that went out on Mardi Gras, but that it could have and it should have probably gotten a bigger footprint. Now that said, I think your colleague Doug McCash was the first one in the case this morning that got the bell ringing bright and early, and here we are with a full room. So it's not a matter of the information didn't get out there, but could it have gone out more artfully? Absolutely.
And then the other question was, you mentioned the message to tourists is gonna be.
Yeah, I think the message to the tourists, to visitors, to anyone, is that if you're coming to New Orleans for Mardi Gras, we ask that you respect the guidelines. We ask that you do it safely. When we have had visitors in town, we have had tourists lately, some of them we've seen have come and have been very respectful, have worn their mask, have maintained social distance. That's what we ask you to do. If you're coming from Mardi Gras, we need you to understand, as you've heard me say a few times at this point, it's gonna look different, it's gonna feel different. It's not gonna have the experience that you may have had a year ago or years prior. So if you're coming to visit, please wear your mask, respect the progress that has been made here, respect the sacrifices that our local businesses and residents have made to make New Orleans a safe place to come and help us keep it safe.
But given the conditions, the city is still asking tourists to come.
Given the conditions, Mardi Gras is happening one way or the other. I mean, that's kind of what we said at the beginning. Mardi Gras is not canceled. And that said, if you're coming here to celebrate Mardi Gras, we're asking you to do it safe.
AP, a couple follow-up questions. One is, the last thing on that fax talks about getting permits for parties. Is this, will that be necessary?
For getting permits for parties?
Yeah.
I'm not certain exactly what the question is. For any small social gathering?
As I recall it, it said, there's a question about, can I have whole parties?
Right.
And it said that, I don't have it in front of me.
No problem. Let me follow up with you on that later because the specifics of it, I'm assuming there's a threshold at some point that we're talking about. My read of that, just from your description of it, is that they're talking about a ball or a large event or that sort of a thing, because I don't think we're talking about permitting a party at your house. But again, and that's important to note, Dr. Degner's been clear on this, public health leaders have been clear. Where we're seeing community spread is not necessarily just from large events. It can come from small, casual social gatherings, and that's why we're asking people as we head into holidays, as we head into Thanksgiving next week, please maintain your vigilance. Please maintain social distancing. Wash your hands, wear your mask. None of this is complicated, none of it's new, but we get it. People are exhausted. We've been doing this since March, and next week is Thanksgiving, and the urge, the impulse is to come together with your family. Please don't do it in a large group, and when you do come together, do it in as smart and as safe a way as you can.
Yeah, what, just double checking, did the fact go up on the web on Friday?
My understanding, Jeff had mentioned that it was Friday. My understanding is that it went up yesterday, late yesterday afternoon.
That wasn't actually me, but the timestamp on the site said it's 11:30.
I think the document, like the FAQ was loaded up at whatever it was on Friday, but this specific language was added yesterday at 2:30.
Yeah, just had a follow-up question. I was just wanting to clarify when that decision was actually made.
So again, from the mayor's perspective, this is not new information, but this is a clarification because there seem to be misunderstandings out there. But the mayor has said at every stage, as we look to celebrate Mardi Gras, as we look for ways forward for next season, it has to happen under the current guidelines. Under the current guidelines, 250 person is a hard cap, and you couldn't have a traditional parade with that small of a number. So we needed to clarify that this is what parameters we're operating within. And again, I feel like those conversations with the mayor, with the media, I guess you did speak to Audrey about this just yesterday, conversations have happened with crew members throughout this, that the way we move forward is we move forward under the guidelines that exist. That means social distancing, it means masking, and it means respecting the gathering limits.
Any other questions?
I just had a follow-up. If I
DSU
could
and
just-
then Fox 8.
I just wanted to clarify a deadline. So the public comment is due by when?
December the 5th,
Okay.
and we're anticipating responses back from the crews, I'm sorry, December 4th for the public, 5th for the cruise. And I think the distinction there is just that the way that honestly, I don't know why there's a one distinction. I won't lie
But
to you.
4th for the public.
4th for the public,
Okay.
5th for the cruise.
Thank
yeah.
you.
Mhm.
Doctor.
Well, I just wanted to clarify, because I know the mayor has been saying that. Yesterday, we got some sound with her, and she actually said yesterday that she would have more information as it relates to the cruise and parading.
Sure.
But they'd have more as the deadline approaches, which is December 5th.
Yep.
Indicating parading was still part of the discussion.
Okay.
But had that decision already been made?
Again, the mayor's thinking on this has always been that however we move forward with the celebration, it will be under the guidelines that exist. And the guidelines that exist have that hard cap on the gathering limits and on social distancing, so that's been a part of the conversation throughout the beginning. If that wasn't as clear as it could have been, this is us clarifying and being very specific, that the guidelines that exist make that not possible.
The Gambit.
How is the city planning to handle some of these smaller informal gatherings, maybe walking cruise or the Mardi Gras Indians?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, and I think part of the conversation we're having right now is trying to socialize that with people and to get not just buy-in, but understanding from everybody that as we move into Thanksgiving, as we move into Christmas, as we move into carnival season, everything has to look different. We all want everything to snap back. We all want it to feel like it did. We want to do what we've always done, and it's not possible right now. So the messaging and the work around small groups, the Indians, everybody else, is making sure that everybody understands what the guidelines are, what's in place, what's expected of them, and what's needed, right? Because this has been a community effort from the beginning, since March. Our residents have done a really strong job of embracing the guidelines. That hasn't been the case everywhere, but in Orleans, we have seen a real strong buy-in from our residents and from our community, and we've seen results, right? That to me is what we can always point back to, is like, look, Orleans, you did it. You stopped the spread, you bent the curve, you've done it twice. So let's not go backwards. And so the messaging to our visitors and to our residents is, don't let your guard down, don't stop, don't take your foot off the gas. And that applies to the Indians, that applies to the residents, and applies to the visitors.
And last question, the advocate.
Does that imply that if any of the Indian groups, if any of the walking groups have a crowd that's more than 250 people, it'll be broken up?
That certainly implies that we don't want to get to that point. We want to work with the Indians and with visitors and with residents ahead of that time and say the crowd that large is not permitted under the current guidelines. We don't want to see it happen, is what I'm saying. I hope it doesn't come to that.
Basically, when we say no parades, we're also including
We're
the
looking at
small
what.
crews under that if they.
Right, a walking
Yeah.
crew would also follow that, right? And again, we're looking for ways that we can do this in non-traditional ways, on smaller formats. We're open to, and we're flexible as to what that can look like, as long as it's underneath the existing current guidelines. Okay,
Thank you all.
thank you all very much.